to be slightly different. Got it. It's going to be slightly different. I got some questions from Yoshua. Question 1. Where did the Rambam take this idea of the supremacy of knowledge of God in Judaism? Is this the ultimate goal in Judaism? We have not seen it in the Torah or the other thinkers in all of Jewish thought. The psukim Rambam brings are only from Nach, and they might mean something different. I interpret them as meaning to be connected to a close, intimate relationship, as in V'ha'adam yada et Chava ishto. That's question number 1. Question number 2. And what, according to Rambam, does it mean to know God? Do I know God if I know some of the laws of nature? Are there many differential equations, somehow God? Or if I am aesthetically impressed by some landscapes, this is God? As I mentioned last week, the Alps. Some love it, but some don't, apparently. This knowledge seems very superficial. Someone once said about the futility of this kind of knowledge, Im yida'ativ hayitiv. If I knew it, I'd be him. 3. Why should I know God? What does it bring me? The Torah actually speaks only of listening to God. And number 4, God shows to Eov or Job the vast and complex nature, tells him thus that he can never know God and his ways. So the Rambam is disputing God's own opinion in Eov? Question mark. These are Yeshua's questions, and I'm going to try and answer them. Okay? At a number of levels, about 4 different clusters of answering, but we are going to use for our purpose a share screen. Then, of course, anybody's entitled to come back and ask and refine. Today's Shiur will see how much we get through of the course. Maimonides on the knowledge of God and Eov. Okay. Yoshua, I can't see you, but I assume that you are with me, okay?
Yeah.
Good, and you can see the sources. Excellent.
Yes.
So I decided to go back to the Rambam's Mishneh Torah. Perhaps I should have begun. Right through his life, his working life, Rambam's books reflect the importance of knowing God in any attempt to be a good Jew. Okay, even in today's world in which orthodoxy is firmly entrenched in doing, perhaps rather than thinking too much. Doing. So in the Mishneh Torah, which is of course the Rambam's great contribution to Jewish law and was written by him in Hebrew. Let's have a look at the very first book, very first chapter in the Mishneh Torah, the 14 books. Rambam, the laws of the foundations of the Torah, chapter 1, law 1. Yesod ha-yesodot, va'amud ha-chochmot. By the way, what happens if you put the letters of the first 4 words? Just take the first letter of the first 4 words. What you get? What you get? The first Yod Hey Vav Hey Shem Hamaforash. Okay, the pillar of all pillars and the foundation of all wisdom. Leida is to know. Sheyesh Sham. In Arabic, the Sham doesn't mean in a physical place. It means that there is in existence, okay? Matsui Rishon, a first cause. V'hu mamsi kol nimsa, and this is the cause that produces all other causes. V'chol hanimsaim mishamayim va'aretz, u'ma shebenehem lo nimtzu ela me'amitat himatza'o. And anything that exists depends for its existence upon the truth of God's existence. So this is the beginning of the Mishneh Torah, not the Moreh Nevukhim, nothing ostensibly philosophical. It's the first book of halakha that a Jew should be observing. Now, I'm going to go on to Hilchot Melachim, Perek Yud Bet Halakha Hey, which happens to be the last halakha in the entire Mishneh Torah. We've gone through 14 books in a flash, okay? Many chapters. Uvoto hazman, talking about Mashiach. Lo yesham, lo ra'ah, velo milchama. When Mashiach comes, there'll be no famine and there'll be no war. Velo kina v'tacharut. People won't be jealous of each other. They won't be in competition with each other. Shatova tiyeh mushpat harbe. Everybody will have access to resources. V'chol hama'adanim mitzuyan ka'afar. And all the treats that we love and are rare will be everyday fare. The only thing we will do is to know God. Ladat et Hashem. Ulefikach yu Yisrael chachamim gedolim. And that's why at the end of days, in the Messianic period, Israel will be a great people, because they will know dvarim hastumim, the hidden things, v'yasigu dat boram kefi koach ha'adam. And they will know as much about God as any human being ever can. I'll talk about Mashiach in my monolith perspective another time, but I just want to push the point of that. Shenemar. Now this is a pasuk. It is in the Nach in Yeshayahu, but it does refer to the end of days. I think it's Isaiah chapter 19. Ki malah haaretz de'at Hashem kamayim layam mechasim. What are we aiming for? A period of time in which the knowledge of God will cover the earth like the waters cover the sea. Doesn't say anything else beside knowledge. De'ah et Hashem. Tam v'nishlam shevach la'el borei olam. I finished writing the Mishneh Torah, says the Rambam. So both at the beginning and at the end, halakha begins with knowledge of God. Rambam is not happy with any halakhic system that doesn't begin with knowing God. He does not say the first thing to do is to get up in the morning, run to shul, and put on tefillin. He says the first thing to do is to know God. And the halakhic system, in fact, and halakhic practices, davening, tefillin, mezuzah, everything is there to focus us on deepening our knowledge of God. And that is a philosophical concept. This is our reward in this world, and it is our reward in the world to come. In the Messianic period, the key is to know God. Now, moreover, knowledge of God is an absolute halakhic requirement. Let's have a look at the Rambam. Hilchot Yisrael Torah, Perek Bet Halacha Aleph. האל הנכבד והנורא הזה מצווה לאוהבו וליראה אותו, שנאמר, ואהבת את השם אלוהיך. How are you going to fulfill the mitzvah of ואהבת את השם אלוהיך? How? ונאמר את השם אלוהיך תירא. The Lord your God you shall fear or be in awe of. How are you going to fulfill those two mitzvot? These are mitzvot in the Tariag mitzvot. It says, it's a mitzvah. It says, and it says, that's in the Torah. How are you going to fulfill those? Or are you going to ignore these mitzvot and say, well, if I fulfill the Shulchan Aruch, then I have fulfilled the mitzvot of Ahavat Hashem and Yirat Hashem. You might think that is the answer, but then why are they separate mitzvot? And they are separate mitzvot in the Rambam's system. And his system is very widely accepted. So, in order to love God and to be in awe of him, we need to know him. Knowing, of course, is a very important part of love. Now, your pasuk, Yoshua, proves the point. V'ha'adam yada et chava ishto. That doesn't refer to a physical act. It refers to an intimate relationship. You can ask Chava if all she was interested in was a physical so-called act of love. And even our contemporary Eves want us to know them, not only physically, but to know them deeply, to have understanding of how they work. If you think about a relationship between a man and a woman, you can think about the relationship that we need to develop with God in order to love him. Rambam says, Hilchot Yisodei Torah, Perek Bet Halacha Aleph. We've read. Bet Halacha Bet. How do we get to love and to be in awe of God? The only way is to look around and see what God has wrought in this world, what he has made, created. Any aspect of a human body is a stunning miracle beyond anything we can comprehend. I'm not going to give you a shakedown now, but think of the DNA, think of our brains, the limbic system, think of the sophistication. No computer, we can design the present, don't know the future, can do even what a almond-shaped hypothalamus can do. It's amazing. This is what we have to reflect on. Okay. We want to know God more. When you start to know someone and you are so impressed, so overborne with what they are, then love begins. David, Sama nafshi lelohim le'el chai. Doesn't say Sama nafshi, I don't know, to a better hashgacha on my butter. It says Sama nafshi lelohim, my soul thirsts for God. Knowledge and love come together. Okay? But at the same time, love can also contain an element of awe. You step back and you say, this is an extremely substantial person. There's a way awe and there's love. Before the one who is perfect in knowledge. Now, where does that phrase, Tamim Deot, come from? Tamim Deot comes from Iyov. Okay? Tamim Deot is a pasuk in Iyov Lamed Zayin Tet Zayin, which is your book, Yoshua, in which we are told Tamim Deot, or actually the pasuk, which is in Lamed Zayin, close to the end. There are 41 chapters in Iyov. God is now describing what he did. Hata'ed al miflasei av. Do you know the balancing of the clouds? Miflas. Tamim de'im, the wondrous works of he who is perfect in knowledge. Rambam is already citing Iyov. You wouldn't know it, but the pasuk is there. So the balance of the clouds, all those things that we read about at the end of Iyov and overwhelm Iyov, they are there to make us feel this feeling of reverence and awe. Okay? David, ki eresh shamecha, ma'aseh etzbotecha, ma enosh ki tizkerenu. What a wonderful pasuk in Tilim. When I see your heavens, the work of your fingers, what is enosh? What would you even think about a human being? Okay? Have him in mind. So I'm going to explain to you, says the Rambam, the greatness of God's work. And he begins with a discussion of the Galgalim, the spheres that we're going to talk about shortly, because this evening's topic, which we will begin at least, is creation, cosmology, how we are to understand the creation of the world. But whatever it is, it clearly is an amazing feat just from the rational understanding of how nature works. But why do we need that? In order to get to fulfill the mitzvah of Avat Hashem. How else are you going to love God if you don't know him? And how will you be in awe of him unless you know him? שמתוך כך אתה מכיר את מי שאמר והיה העולם. Chazal. When you look at shamecha maaseh etzbaotecha, the heavens, and remember in the 12th century, this was Aristotelian spheres, the Nestor spheres that we're going to talk about, the music of the spheres. This is astronomy, which Rambam taught his pupil, Yosef ben
Iman.
Okay, it was Yosef ben Yehuda, not Aknin. Yosef ben Yehuda, who came to learn what from the Rambam. Rambam wrote his Moreh Nevukhim for Yosef ben Yehuda. What three subjects did Yosef ben Yehuda come to Egypt to learn from the Rambam? Did he come to learn halakha, Yoshua? No, he didn't. What did he come to learn? Astronomy. Thank you, Deb. And mathematics and no, logic, mathematics, and astronomy. That was what the Rambam taught this Talmud, for whom he wrote Moreh Nevukhim and sent it chapter by chapter. Because this is how we fill the mitzvot of Ahava and Yirah. Ulefia kamo shamu chachamim binyan Ahava. Okay, so the Rambam, I think, has answers to some of the questions. In addition to our scale Vayadoa, Oti, and many other psukim, this is very basic to our faith, says the Rambam. Mitzvat Ahava and Mitzvat Yirah. And knowing, the only way we can know is to understand how the world works. That's the only way. So we have to go through all of these subjects in order to get close to understanding God. And understanding God is the goal of what we are going to do to bring the story of the human race to its desired end. In the days of the Mashiach, we will spread the knowledge of God. And everything we do in halakha, says the Rambam, we'll get to this when we talk about Tamei Mitzvot. When you say Shema, you control your mind, focus, concentrate. First line, second line, third line, the entire chapter. But when you're focusing, you're actually training your mind, and you move on to ideas, to subjects. And from that, you get to what Rambam would call metaphysics. We're going to have a look at that, or we mentioned it last week, Acharei HaTeva. And you understand the way God works, what he is, that he's not corporeal, what the midata, the relationship with him. And then we get into the realm of prophecy, what it means to be a prophet, which is a natural state in a way, an intellectual state, and we have that to discuss as well. But now the last point I'm going to make, and then the floor will be yours. I've cited for you a section from book 3:23, when the Rambam actually discusses Eov. Okay, he has a whole chapter dealing with Eov, and he has the following to say. Book 3, section 23. Let's have a look. Okay, we've got a little bit to read here. V'chen timsa zot hanevuah. Now, of course, Rambam doesn't say that the book of Eov is a real story. We'll talk about that too. It's a nevuah, a prophecy, okay? In very graphic terms, a good man suffers terribly. He has 4 friends who all come and suggest reasons for his suffering, okay? At the end of the day, Eov is not convinced, and then God comes along and says, you were right not to be convinced, but now I have to teach you how to think in order not to question me. Everything that Eov thought was all wrong, okay? All his theories, all the things that he had to think about and reject, it's got no basis. God's answer to Eov, as you correctly said, Yoshua, is simply a catalogue of the way the world was created and functions and is such a marvelous thing. Okay? Inyanim tiviim, natural matters. Sipur otot means otot shamayim, means the way that meteorology works. Okay? Or tiviim minei barei chayim, zoology. V'lo davar acher. God doesn't tell Eov anything else. He just says, look at my world. Do you understand it? Do you understand how these amazing things happen? And he mentions there the works of the high heavens. What is Ksil and what is Kima? Anybody know?
They're
two constellations.
Constellations. Debbie got in first, but merci beaucoup, Jean. Okay. What is Ksil? Which constellation?
Pleiades. The other one. Pleiades.
Debbie says Kima is Pleiades. Remember the 7 bright stars.
Yeah.
Or in France, actually, in the 17th century, a group of brilliant poems were called the Pleiades. Correct, Jean? Any group of brilliant people could be called a Pleiade. Ksil is Orion. Orion was a nasty bit of work, but he got the constellation anyhow. But very bright in the night sky. They're close to us, so we can see them. Okay, these are very bright stars. They are Ksil and Kima are in the lowest sphere connecting heaven and earth in the ancient Greek system that people believed in right up until Kepler, Copernicus, and Galileo. Okay. Rambam uses the phrase the sublunar world. The moon is in the lowest sphere. There are 9 spheres connecting heaven and earth. Okay, the lowest sphere has the moon. This is Aristotle. This is actually Claudius Ptolemaeus, okay, the 1st century Alexandrian astronomer, whose system reigned for 1,000 years, just like Galen in medicine, Yoshua. Ptolemy reigned in astronomy. Okay. וכן עוד התעורר אליהו ממיני בעלי חיים. Elihu actually gets quite close. He says, look, nature's wonderful. Amar. How would you read the next pasuk, even if you haven't read Eov chapter 35? What is your guess for the first word? Can you read it? How would you read it? Anybody? You actually have time to go onto your computer and look at Eov Lamed Hey Pasuk Yud Aleph. But I'm going to steal your thunder. Malfeini. What does Malfeini mean? What Hebrew word do you see there? Malfeini. Where do girls go to learn? Ulpan. Where you learn. It's in the Nach. Malfeinu mibahamot aretz. Teach us. Give us a university in the animals of the earth. Umeof hashamayim yichakmeinu. And make us wise by exposing us to the secrets of the flight of birds. The Rov Masheherich b'dibur ahu haya b'toa Livyatan. Elihu goes on about the Livyatan. Asher kalal skulot gashmiot mefuzarot b'bal hachayim haolech v'hasoche v'hamo'ofef. This is a living creature that can fly, it jump, it can walk on land, and it can also swim. You can look up Eov in your spare time. כל אלה העניינים הייתה הכוונה בהם שאלו העניינים הטבעיים הנמצאים בעולם, ההווי וההפסד לא יגיעו דעותינו להשיג איכות התחדשם ולא לציור מציאות זה הכוח הטבעי בהם. איך התחלתו? We have no idea how they came into being, how they work, okay? We know, but we know that we don't know. There's so much more. And look, we're discovering things every day, not only about the human body, but about bats, about snakes, about dolphins, porpoises, whales, bees, microbes, anything you like. And we learn more and more, and we learn how much we don't know. We are primitives. What we can do is primitive compared to the wonders of nature. ואיך נשתדל שתהיה הנהגתו יתברך להם, והשגחתו בהם דומה להנהגתנו, מה שננהיג או להשגחתנו במה שנשגיח בו. So we have to understand that when we think we are managing something, like the world, we have no idea how to manage a world like God. אבל הראוי לעמוד אצל זה השיעור, ולהאמין שהוא יתברך לו, תעלה ממנו תעלומה. But God sees all. כמו שאמר אליהו שם, כי עיניו על דרכי איש. God does look at what people do. וכל צעדיו יראה. He sees all their steps. אין חושך ואין צל מוות. There's no darkness or shadow, להסתתר שם פועלי אוון, for the workers of iniquity to hide it. God does see, but how he runs the world, if you don't even understand what you can see, how could you understand what goes on behind the veil of history? And indeed, his hashgacha is not like ours. One definition will not. Give me a pasuk from the Haftarah of a Ta'anit Sibur that says exactly the same thing. Kilo. Exactly. Kilo machshavotov machshavotenu. Okay. V'lo drachav darkeinu. Kemo she'achshev kol navuch. Now this we back to the Nevukhim. The perplexed are confused because they don't make a clear difference between God and us. Ve'en beinehem shituf. There's no shituf. Ki im b'shem levad. God is unique, and the things he does are far from our understanding. That, according to the Rambam Yoshua, is what God is telling Eov. Whereas we have to go through all of them Moreh Nevukhim first part to understand that when God speaks and when God stretches out his hand, it doesn't mean anything resembling what human beings do. וכהבדלות הפעולות הטבעיות מן הפעולות המלאכותיות, כן הוא הבדל ההנהגה האלוהית וההשגחה והכוונה האלוהית לעניינים ההם הטבעיים מהנהגתנו והשגחתנו וכוונתנו האנושית למה שננהיג אותו ונשגיח עליו ונכון אליו. We run things differently because of the smallness of our knowledge. God runs things the way he does because of the vastness of his. Zot hayta kavanat sefer Eov kulo. This is what Eov means. Ratzoni lomar latet zot hapina b'emunah ulaha'ir sheyilamdu ha're'iyah min ha'inyanim ha'tiviyim. Yes, we do study science. We learn how the world works. Perhaps we can even have a bit of a thrill when we climb the Alps and enjoy the aesthetic side of it. עד שלא תטעה ותבקש בדמיונך, שתהיה ידיעתו כידיעתנו. That's the point. Therefore, his knowledge is so different to ours. או כוונתו והשגחתו. We're going to talk about השגחה according to the Rambam as well. But it's so different. והנהגתו ככוונתנו והשגחתנו והנהגתנו. And he runs the world differently. וכשידע אדם זה, יקל עליו כל מקרה. Once you understand it, but not accept it because you're taught it by your Rebbe in Cheder, you understand this as a fully intellectual human being. You get to the stage. Einstein understood a lot about the world, and he said, you know what? God doesn't play dice with the universe. He understood enough to know that there is a divine order out there. And once you understand that, then you can survive anything. Anything that happens, you'll be able to take. You will not doubt God because of what's going wrong according to human terms in the world. Does God know? Does he not know? Is he looking after us? Has God left the world? Of course not. But we are trying to look at the world not through God's eyes because we don't know him yet. We're trying to look at the world through our eyes. And to us, it's a mess. What does the last pasuk in Eov? Al ken em'as v'nichamti al afar va'efer. What does that mean? It's Mem Bet, last pasuk of where Eov actually speaks. I abhor my words. Nim'as li ma she'amarti. Nichamti ki asitim. I repent. I take it all back. Okay? Seeing as I'm dust and ashes. Who else said that they were afar and efer in the Tanakh? Avraham. There we are. And Avraham stands as the first one who loves God, knows God all by his own efforts. Vanochi afar va'efer. Am I questioning your judgment about Sodom and Amorah? From a human point of view, it seems to me that you're not doing justice. But I'm still afar va'efer. Whatever you say will be something that I will accept. Chmo she'amru Zal, Masechet Shabbat, Osim tzadikim osim me'ava usmechim beyisurim. Yisurim shel ahava. Yoshua is a well-known rabbinic concept to this day. Yisurim shel ahava. But the only one who can be protected in his or her faith is the one who has made an attempt to understand or know God. ואתה כשתסתכל בכל מה שאמרתי, ההסתכלות שצריך להסתכל בו. This is, of course, Rambam's usual, somewhat didactical style, if I can put it that way. He says, if you really see and understand what I have told you, and now you can look at the book of Eov in the correct way, which is my way, B'zeh ha'mamar, and because you've studied this chapter, u'ta'ayen kol inyanei sefer Eov, and you look at Eov, all of it, yitpaer lecha ha'inyan, everything will become clear. The timsa'eni shekvar kilalti, see if somebody needs a link. The tafasti kol inyanav lo yimalet mimenu davar. Elama sheba beseder advarim. You will understand everything in Eov, pasuk by pasuk, chapter by chapter. Kamo shebiarti lecha pa'amayim bezeh ha'mamar, as I've told you twice in this mamar. So this is my case. This is my initial reaction, Yoshua, to your questions. I'm happy. Shall I take this screen share off? Are we happy to react to this?
This seems to be a paradox. We have to know in order to know that we don't know.
That is a wonderful thing. I think that is the most that human beings can expect to do. I will stop a share unless somebody wants to ask about a particular
connection of all this to Torah and mitzvahs, to Torah mitzvot.
Okay, so we don't know. That is the greatest achievement. But it's Yoshua knowing that we don't know because we know so much, not because we are Amaratzim, okay? And because we know nothing, we say, I don't know. We know. I'm going to cite you a Rashi, Yevamot, I think it's Nuntet. The Gemara there says that all the Nevi'im saw God through an aspaklaria she'ina me'ira, okay? A prism that wasn't clear. And they thought that they saw. Yeah, Ishaya sees God on his throne, okay? Yechezkel sees the Maaseh Merkava. Moshe Rabbeinu, what does it say? He saw Baspaklaria Me'ira. Pel pe adaber bo, okay? Panim el panim. V'yada shelo ra'a. And Rashi says, Yada shelo yada. And Aish Moshe anav mod. Why didn't the Torah say Moshe Rabbeinu was a tzaddik, was a chacham, was wise, was great? Why did he say he was an anav? So according to Rashi and according to the Ramban, and according to the trend of what we have been saying, the man who knew the most knew that he didn't know. But that is the highest measure of knowledge when comparing human beings to God. We truly know that we do not know God. Most of us say we don't know God. Most of us don't even think about God. When was the last time you really thought about God and about your relationship with him? Or you can very easily do mitzvot and learn the daf yomi every day. You divide your day up, davening, learning, mitzvot, gimilut. chasadim, and you say, this is my perfect Jewish life. This is what the Rabbeinu Shalom wants. But perhaps he doesn't. Perhaps he wants more. Perhaps he wants you to lehovoto, liyarei mimenu, haskel v'yadoa oti. And think about it. Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov are speaking to God. God speaks to them. When was the last time we had a conversation with God? Even in our own minds and heads. Chaim Soloveitchik, I don't know whether you ever read this essay in a tradition. Rabbi Joseph Ber Soloveitchik's son wrote a famous essay that actually caused quite a few tremors in modern orthodoxy. And he said, you know what? We all live today in a halachic audit. In other words, everybody is wondering, how many mitzvahs have we done today? Have we got a mezuzah that answers both the Chazon Ish and Rav Na'eh? Are we eating kazayit or matzah at our Seder? Are we taking 5 minutes, 9 minutes, 12 minutes? Where is the Rabbeinu Shalom in all of that? Does anybody think about God? When's the last time we had a conversation and tried to get close to something that's outside of ourselves or our catalog? He says it's like a tax audit. Lahavdil elef havdalot. Have I done my daf? Have I learnt my Mishnah? Have I given my tzedakah? Have I davened 3 times a day with a minyan? Am I eating kosher? Okay. But there's a whole world out there. And how are we to judge halachic questions? I'm only going to throw at you one example, Yoshua, which is in a way local, because I'm going to Montreux. Now, if I go to Montreux in Switzerland, which posek do I have in mind?
Yes, of course.
The Sridei Eish, of course, Rabbi Chiel Yaakov Weinberg. Now, Rabbi Chiel Yaakov Weinberg was asked an interesting question. Is it permitted halachically to eat human flesh? Or rather, I'll put it a different way. Is it forbidden to eat human flesh? Basar Adam. You didn't kill anyone. You go into your supermarket in Enger or in Wollishofen, and you ask the cashier, I want a kilo of human flesh. Okay, it's on sale. Buy it for a few francs. Is this halachically asur or not?
Not according to Shakespeare.
Not evidence.
Not according to Shakespeare, Shmuley, very good. But they were goyim. Okay. Is it asur?
No.
Is there an isur on eating basar adam, halachically?
Nothing in Shulchan Aruch about this subject.
Nothing in the Shulchan Aruch. And the
But
Torah
aren't
says,
there things that are so clear that they don't have to be written down?
right, Yael. Rabbi Weinberg says, by the way, I can prove to you halachically, we'll just have some halachic fun here. How can I prove to you that basar adam is mutar? Well, we have a principle of yotzei in the Yoredeya. What's the principle of yotzei when it comes to dinei kashrut? Can you drink the milk of a lioness, a female lion? Can you?
No.
Well, why not?
I call yotzei mina tame.
Because you can't eat the lioness. Okay. By the way, can you eat honey, Jean?
Yes, and there is a discussion, but I'm not in mind.
Can you eat a bee?
No.
No. So how can you eat honey? Rambam, of course, takes this up and says the honey doesn't come from the bee. The honey comes from the nectar and the flower and the side of its body. Knowing the wonders of nature, of course, there's a tiny organ which the bee uses to convert the nectar into eventually honey and the honeycomb, a whole pilpul, okay? My next question is, can you drink human milk? Is it kosher? The answer is, it is.
Yes.
We all drink it at a certain age. And after 24 months, we can drink it, but we shouldn't drink it from its regular biological source. We should buy it in a container from the supermarket, okay? There will be no problem. Now, if you can drink the milk of a mother, what does that tell you about the flesh of a mother? It is, say the word, kosher. Would we, now let me give you an example, again taken this time from a Hungarian rabbi, Rabbi Moshe Shmuel Glasner, the rabbi of Cluj or Klausenberg, for 40 years, a great-grandson of the Chassam Sofer. He wrote a perush on Chulin called Dor Revi'i, because he was the 4th generation of the Chassam Sofer. His father, Avraham Glasner, was married to Razel Ehrenreich, a granddaughter of the Chassam Sofer. So he said, what happens if an Orthodox Jew is told by his doctor that he has to either eat a kilogram of human flesh or a kilogram of pig flesh in order to save his life? It's a terrible disease, and the only cure is either human flesh or pig flesh. Which one should he choose? Your Orthodox Halakhic Jew. Yoshua, which one should you choose?
No idea.
Sorry?
No idea.
Which one?
I'm puzzled. I don't know.
Well, halachically speaking, I have told you, I've proved to you that human flesh is mutar. Is pig flesh mutar?
You haven't proven to me that human flesh is mutar. Maybe it's like the bee, the honey of the bee.
No, we know that human milk comes from the body of a human. And by the way, I have on my side Ramban and Rashba, Chulin Daf Samach Vav. Look it up, okay? Chulin Samach Vav, Ramban, Rashba, they say exactly this point. The only exception is the Hagot Maimuniot, who says that it may be an Isur Aseh, because it does say in the Torah, et ze tochelu, okay, shor say savim, the say is it, but that would be an Isur Aseh. Says
But
these
isn't there a quota? Isn't there
Sorry?
a quota met? Isn't there a quota met that you can say? There's also a mitzvah that we are mechabed the corpse. So I think this would contradict, no?
Do you think that anything related to honoring a corpse would override pikuach nefesh? You need to save your life. Exactly. You've given the answer. So we come back. I'm trying to force Yoshua to say that he would choose the human flesh. Okay? Now, Rabbi Glasner says, chas v'chalila, that you should choose human flesh rather than eating pig. Why? Here we have to go to philosophy. We have to go to what Rabbi Weinberg calls Ratzon Hashem. What would God want us to do in this context? We have to go beyond pure halachic technocracy and say, as human beings who share a bond with other human beings, we have a choice between eating flesh of a pig and human flesh. What is the more moral, ethical, refined, and what would Hashem want us to do? Mibchinat Ratzon Hashem. And in Chelik Gimel Siman Kuf Kaf Zayin, in Stridei Esh, Rabbi Weinberg says, God prefers us to eat the pig rather than do something which offends against our basic humanity. He uses that, by the way, in the tshuva there is it's a rubella case. Your field, Yoshua. What happens if a woman is diagnosed with rubella, German measles, early in her pregnancy? What is the possible result? In the 1950s, of course. Rubella.
Even today.
Right. What is the possible result?
The deformation of the baby.
Deformation of the baby. Very serious. So the question was, the Ministry of Health in Britain had sent around a order saying that in such a case, if a woman presents with rubella early on in the pregnancy, she is required to be sent to have an abortion. Now, a Haredi doctor from Golders Green said, as far as I know, abortion is asur, according to Jewish law. But if I don't fulfill the order of the Ministry of Health, I'm likely to lose my job. What shall I do? So he sends his sheila to the Gaon Harav Yechiel Yaakov Weinberg. Okay, and Rabbi Weinberg, of course, writes back many pages. Okay, and one of the things he says is that it would seem, and according to halakha, if you analyze it, there's no actual isur on killing a fetus. No actual isur. If you really analyze the sources, there's no isur on killing a fetus. Punkt fakert, you might say, adarabah. If you look at the Torah, Torah says, "V'chinatzu anashim," if men have a brawl, v'nadfu isha hara, v'yatzu yeladeha, and they cause a woman to lose the fruit of her womb, what happens then? V'natan biflilin, kashe yashit alav bal ha'isha. Because if the woman's life was not cut short, and the only damage was the loss of a fetus, the penalty is a tortious one. It is money, demei vladot. And from that flows a line of psika in halakha that there is no isur midoraita and no clear-cut isur midrabanan on killing a fetus. But Rabbi Weinberg says, Ratzon Hashem, both the idea of the eating of a corpse, cannibalism, and the idea of killing a fetus for no good reason offend the sensibility of anybody who understands what God wants from us. Ratzon Hashem. I can give you many poskim, including Reb Osher Weiss. He has a whole section in his Minchas Osher on those mitzvot or those norms that are based upon Ratzon Hashem. Without Ratzon Hashem, and this is the second point I'm making, beside Rambam's proofs of Ahava, Yirah, Mashiach, and Yisod HaYisodot, we will have a very poor and flat Judaism if we don't engage with God. If we simply think that all we need to do is to fulfill the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, then it'll be very thin. I mean, look, we do have a good recipe for living a good life. Nobody will deny that coming from inside Judaism, okay, that we have a wonderful recipe, kihi chayecha v'orech yamecha. The Torah gives us a shortcut to the best of philosophy, the best of ethics, and even Yesod HaYibur, astronomy, Kiddush HaChodesh, science, and mathematics. But it is only the beginning. It is only the beginning. If we never march, if we never go beyond that, then we are missing out a very rich world, which is what the Rambam is trying to introduce to us a little bit. He does it in his Shmoneh Prakim, is in his commentary on the Mishnah, a little bit. Mishneh Torah is full of his philosophy, as we know, and Moreh Nevukhim is, in fact, in a way, the crowning glory, but it's the most dangerous thing. And I told you this at the very beginning. If you join this Shiur, you are joining a Shiur written by the great Rambam for people in his time. And I'm going to talk about that. It will clearly be next week when we talk about the act of creation and how to understand science of creation and faith. Speaking to people of his time who lived in a very Aristotelian world, and they said, this is what reality and science teaches us, and it seems to conflict with what's written in the Torah. How are we going to handle that? If that doesn't bother you, and this is the last cluster. Cluster number one was the Rambam proves, I think, that Yidiyat Hashem is vitally important. Number two, I think that religiously speaking, we are poorer if we do not have a dimension of a relationship with God, which transcends halakha in our everyday religious life, as is Chaim Soloveitchik's famous essay, okay, where he complains about the fact that we've become halachic automata, is a good starting point for a discussion on that. And the third point is that we do absorb the best of what critical thought has to give us in our time. And it shouldn't be confrontational. It should be, according to the Rambam, an internal step on the way to perfection. This is where we should be, and we should take it on board, and we should be able to use it to advance to the sunny uplands of an understanding, at least the maximum of human understanding of the Ribono Shel Olam, and this will make us into a relationship. with him. We often, I think, giggle when we see, say, fiddler on the roof. Okay, Tevye der Milchiga is speaking to God, but in fact, it means, of course, the joke there, by the way, that Shalom Aleichem is playing, is not that Tevye is speaking to God; it's that a milkman is speaking to God. But we should be speaking to God, and we've forgotten the art of speaking to God. Avraham speaks to God. Yaakov, Yitzchak, Moshe is speaking to God all the time. And David HaMelech says, Kirvat Elohim li tov. These are the things that we may be missing. And that's why it's so important for the Rambam to emphasize this, okay? And that's Sadi Gaon, by the way. Yeshua does something very similar. Are you aware of his Emunot V'Deyot?
Oh.
Well, he does something very, very similar in his time. Philon Ha-Alexandroni does something very, very similar. It all goes back to how do we assimilate and combine what's written in the Torah and everything that there is out there that seems to be correct, accurate, and critically compelling. And that's what we're going to talk about next week, clearly. We're not going to do it this week. How we can reconcile the theories, if at all, of Aristotle and Plato and Ibn Baya and Al-Farabi about the way the world came into being, and Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim v'et haaretz, as we'll see. It's a major problem. And here we are hitting our generation and our time. How many kids come home and say, I'm learning physics, chemistry, and biology in school, even in school. I know that the world came into existence because of the Big Bang. I know that we're all amino acids and proteins. What are you giving me, Maaseh Bereshit? We have to know how to answer that intelligently. We have to work this out for ourselves. We can't just say, es steht impossible. Okay? It's not going to make our children very happy or content. We need to have better answers. But you know what? We need to have better answers for ourselves. And we've neglected this whole realm of theology, possibly for very good reasons, okay? And I'm not going to go into a historical explanation of that, but it's time possibly to come out of that cocoon and say, yes, we can confront what there is to confront, and let's see if we can do it in the Rambam style. And that's what I'm going to point out next week in his famous discussion in Book 2, Chapter 25, on the creation of the world. And I'll just give you one word so we make the introduction to next time a little bit easier. We have 4 more minutes. Unless, of course, somebody wants to come back on the questions Yoshua has raised. And I want to thank you, Yoshua, for raising them, because you were quite right. I think it's very important to have some of these things said. I can't say everything because it's a very big book, the Moreh Nevukhim. Mishneh Torah is a very big book. A commentary of Mishnah is a very big book. But I think that your questions help us to get to some very basic ideas behind the Rambam's understanding approach and his greatness, really, in trying to offer us a picture of Judaism which is complete, that isn't piecemeal. It's not Zeir Sham, it's not Bislach Bais. It is something that is an organic whole that makes sense in all worlds and brings everything together into one magnificent edifice. So thanks. But you have another word if you want.
Yes, I want.
Please go ahead.
You have a son of 18 years, your son or any son, and he comes to you and says, I want to learn in yeshiva, I want to learn in university, philosophy or physics or metaphysics. What would you advise him to do?
Well, I think we answered the question last week. The answer is yeshiva university. Do both. Do both, but don't go to a place where they say one is treif and the other is kosher. That applies to both to the university and to the yeshiva. I think there was something going in Montreux. Rav Bochko set up a yeshiva, which I think tried to do something very similar. Am I not correct?
You are correct.
I am correct. Well, that may be the model. We need a lot more of those, I think. Okay? So I believe that we are a minute and a half, Yael, away from the end. So I can, in fact, we are in Swiss time after all. We don't start on time, but we certainly finish bang on time. Rambam's world. Rambam's world was a world in which the heavens are made of a special material. Shemay Shamayim are very high. There are 9 spheres, circles, a nest of spheres, okay, going around the world. He is geocentric, like Ptolemy, okay? The earth is in the middle. First of all, there is a sphere containing the moon. Then there is a sphere containing Mercury. How do we say Mercury in Hebrew? Kochav Chama. The third sphere contains Venus, Noga. The fourth sphere is the sun. The fifth is Mars, Mardim. The sixth is Jupiter, Tzedek. The seventh is Saturn, Shabtai. How many planets did they know in the 13th century? 5. Didn't know 7 yet. Okay? And of course, everything turns around the earth. But if God is perfect, then those circles or circuits or orbits should be perfectly circular and round. Now, the fascinating thing which gripped human beings for so many years was looking at the sky and tracking the planets and the stars. And it turned out that the circles of the spheres are not pure circles, they are ellipses. They don't actually run perfectly circulatory. But if God is perfect and he put this system into effect, even in Aristotelian terms, why don't we have pure circles? The answer is next week, 9:15, all being well. So we'll talk about cosmology, and the sources that I sent you out this evening will be good for next week, okay? Because that's what we will do. We'll do the creation, the ultimate perplexity next week, and I wish you all a very good evening. We are at the end of our session.
Thank you.
Which is the Siman in
Thank you.
CAH where he
Thank you.
about this abortion? I would like to check that.
I believe it's Chelek Gimel Siman Kuf Kaf Zayin, but I will send Yael, whose email I have, an email once I've checked. But I think it's Gimel Kuf Kaf Zayin, I think. But I'll check. Okay?
Yael also sent us a copy of what you projected today to ask the questions of Yoshua.
Ah, okay. I will. Yoshua's answers. Yoshua is already a star here. Okay. The questions. Right. Maimonides on the knowledge of God and Job. I will send that in Mitzvah Hashem to Yael. You've got more work, Yael.
Yeah, or I mean, one could also put it directly into the WhatsApp group, and anyone could just have a look at it at the WhatsApp group. I think this would be the most efficient. But if this doesn't work, I will copy it over.
Which means that I can do it, Yael, right?
Yes.
I understand. Okay. Ich verstehe. Okay, I will put it up on the WhatsApp group. Jean, do you have access to the WhatsApp group?
I will ask my wife. I am not aware. Otherwise, I will ask someone to send it to me.
Okay. If you send me your email, I will send it to you back. But I don't have your email. Okay.
And is your email with? I saw an email with ending with Fordham. This is your.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
I found it. I will send you.
So send me an email, say I want the 3 days reference, and I will in it, so Shembeline send it to you. And Yael, I will put the sources for the, and both sheets, I'll put the sources as well on the WhatsApp.
I ask
Okay, everybody.
I ask you the question because
Yeah.
I am afraid that the 3-day age would, for Ratzon Hashem, have abnormal children born. I'm a little afraid of this conclusion.
Then that's something I need to make clear. Rabbi Weinberg said that in general, we should not destroy a fetus, but in order to prevent a fetus being born with deformities, he said, of course, you can take advantage of the halachic leniency, and you can abort. Sure. Oh no, that's perfect. The remarkable thing that he says, and very few poskim would say this. He says, you know what? There's no actual isur. That's the interesting line of this tshuva, which you should see. There's actually no isur. And I've told this to a few people. They all didn't believe me, including Gabi Cohen, who has Swiss antecedents, okay? And I showed them the tshuva, and they were all amazed. But that's what Weinberg, he was a very honest man. If you read his mechkarim on the Talmud, he was absolutely full of integrity, and he said it like it was. Very few. Okay, he was a rabbiner, doctor, very interesting, exceptional, and a Lithuanian Ilui who became the dean of the Hildesheimer Seminary in Berlin, and passionately believed in Torah in Derech Eretz. Whether the Rambam was not a Torah in Derech Eretz man. He believed that no two realms, Torah and Derech Eretz, it's all one. It's all in Torah. He went way beyond that sort of thing. Okay, more next week. Have a rest of the week and a Shabbat Shalom, and